Hello and greetings, fellow StarCrafters. PGL Minecraft here with a very exciting game coming to you from IEM Grand Challenge. I believe this took place in Kiev, if I remember correctly. But either way, it is the Intel Extreme Masters, so it is, in fact, because of Intel, and Intel, of course, supports esports because those are the people who generally buy their processors, and it's really great that they can give back to the community. So definitely, I encourage you to buy an Intel. To buy an Intel processor, just to kind of support companies that support esports and kind of encourage them to keep on supporting esports by holding things like the Intel Extreme Masters and all sorts of other different kinds of sponsorships, which Intel has had over throughout the years because they've been a GSL sponsor as well for many years, if they're not currently still. But just to get into the game, we will in fact be seeing mouzHasu, who formerly known as Hasu, is part of the team Mouz Sports, and he is going to be here in the upper right-hand corner, and he's going to be against none other than the extremely good Slayers player, Slayers MMA, who has in fact won the GSL, also won a MLG tournament, and has done very well at many other tournaments. He is one of my favorite Terran players, and actually one of my favorite players, period. He's extremely well known for his drop play, so he will be, apparently they paused the game there, that's what the text was. So we should be seeing a lot of drops in this game, especially should mouzHasu decide to go for something like Colossus Tech, which generally encourages the Terran player to be able to drop against it. But just in general, drops tend to be pretty powerful against Protoss players, and Protoss players have to take natural precautions against them. Looks like Hasu is going to be scouting in the upper left-hand corner, which is not going to be able to quite find it. Let's see, before I lose my train of thought too much, I do want to mention that this map is Antiga Shipyard. You might know that already, but just for those of you who don't, Antiga Shipyard, and I believe it is the gold patches right here. In the GSL version, it does not have the gold patches. So we can see those tend to not really matter too much in this sort of game. Perhaps the Terran player, MMA in this case, of course, will be able to expand there very quickly and get a planetary fortress up and kind of hold that section using maybe some siege tanks or something. But we don't really see siege tanks all that often, and I wouldn't really expect that style of play from MMA. Just in general. Looks like he is actually behind the SCV down there. He does not want the probe to be able to see that. He wants the probe to just basically run away from that Marine, and then he can drop down the command center without it even getting spotted. So very nice job from him, able to keep his opponent in the dark because of that late scout. Well, it wasn't really a late scout, but it went to the wrong section first, and thus did not spot the command center going down. So right now, Hasu is a little bit in the dark of exactly what MMA is doing. Most likely he's not going to be doing a gas build, because normally if you're doing a gas build, you do not get a Marine right away. By a gas build, I mean either a 2-Rex rush or well, actually, a 2-Rex rush, sometimes you do get a Marine. But I was thinking, like, if you did like a Marauder expand, for example, you would generally not get the Marine, and if you don't get a Reaper expand, you would generally not get that Marine there. But sometimes you do. It kind of depends a little bit on the build. Nice little control there from the Zealot. Is going to get a couple of swipes on that SCV, but he will get inside. Unfortunately, that Stalker will then pop out, killing the SCV. So Slayers MMA can see that it was not, in fact, a command center first in this particular engagement. So both players are going for relatively heavy economic builds. This map naturally lends itself to a pretty heavy economy because it has this easy to defend third right here, which has these rocks up here protecting a giant ramp as well as an interior ramp, and army right here does a pretty good job of kind of protecting all three of your expansions, basically all at the same time. But it is worth noting that if you have forces out here, it can be pretty difficult to get all the way back up into your base to defend against drops, which is part of the reason why I said drop play is likely. Now, because this bunker is up, I don't predict any damage coming from this unless Hasu decides to just basically run straight into the Protoss base. He's actually not going to have to do that, and Slayers MMA, being very smart there, was actually able to disembark his Marines and be able to take a couple of free pot shots against that Zealot down there, able to take it out, and now the SCV is in fact going to spot the expansion. This Sentry, though, is going to be able to fire its little blue ray cannon right now and start damaging the SCV. Those of you paying attention, by the way, this is another thing that I just forgot to mention. I decided to play StarCraft 1 music for this. I thought that'd just be kind of entertaining for those of you who used to play StarCraft Brood War. And I'm playing the Terran music, actually, from it, which the Terran music from StarCraft Brood War was absolutely amazing. I really loved it. I think it's... I mean, the current Terran music is still amazing, but it's probably not quite as good. Wow, this is... Okay, so he's actually gone for 4 racks after expanding. So this is very close to those of you who know the Little Ones build, where he goes 5 barracks and actually attacks by producing 5 Marines at once. Slayers MMA is doing a build that's very close to that, but not quite. It's just a little less Marine heavy. And right now, if Hasu not watching his Stalker, he's going to lose it. Oh, actually, if MMA... Oh! Might lose it anyway. No, it looks like he's going to get out of there, and he turns around. That was dangerous. That Stalker's got a bit of a death wish right there. He's just trying to hope to delay these Marines at this point, but a couple of sentries should be doing a pretty good job. He's actually got 3 sentries right now. Those force fields should hold those Marines back pretty effectively up near the ramp, especially if he split them, able to get Marines in 2 separate groups. He should be just fine from this sort of engagement. I was going to mention that early game Marines without stim, without combat shields, tend to be fairly weak against Protoss unless they're backed up by something like siege tanks or banshees, as in a 1-1-1 all-in build that Terran players do like to do against Protoss players. So you can see that there is no actual aggression as a result of the 4 Rex play. It's just a way to kind of maximize his resources at this point in time. So that MMA can produce a ton of Marines, and these Marines, of course, are going to be very effective in the late game, especially against, you know, things like heavy zealot compositions, which we tend to see from Protoss players. Unfortunately, the Stalkers are actually going to run straight to their deaths. Very nice target firing from MMA will bring one of those Stalkers down. The Observer now will be able to spot the Marines inside of the gas cover, I guess the vent leaks or whatever, and being able to do some damage right there. Except that Observer Observer is continuing to move on towards the opposing base. Proxy pylon placed here. Very smart to be able to do that. Of course, MMA is going to be looking for those probably with SCVs or Marines just to make sure that no proxy pylons kind of get down. And we can see kind of the slow transition towards a gas-heavy army as he is getting an engineering bay right now for upgrades. And his actually engineering bay is going to finish before his opponent's forge. Of course, Protoss players do have a chrono boost, obviously, which will assist them with upgrading faster, because they can chrono boost their upgrades and make them go faster. The reason I was trailing off a little bit is I was just watching those Stalkers just absolutely destroy those Marines, and that's exactly what I was talking about. Is, you know, Marines tend to be fairly effective just kind of in a general basis, and no Marauder slow unfortunately means that he will not be able to pick off that Stalker. But Marines without Marauder support really have a lot of trouble with Stalkers, just because Stalkers have longer range and they're faster, so they're able to deal, you know, just a ton of damage to those Marines. And you can see that each of these Stalkers, 2 kills, 0 kills, 1 kill, 1 kill, 2 kills, 3 kills. It's about like, you know, 8 to 9 Marines, and that's very significant, actually. It's a lot of DPS that Slayer's MMA really doesn't have anymore. Well, not that he really doesn't have anymore. He doesn't have it anymore, obviously. Looks like the starport is now done, so we'll be able to start getting some medevacs out, healing his units. And combat shield is done. Did he? I think he did do stim pack first. Yeah, so stim pack is in fact completed. That's a little interesting, because usually with these gas heavy armies, a lot of Terran players do in fact like to go, or not gas heavy, marine heavy, sorry. They do like to go for combat shields first, just to make sure they, oh my god, that was a mistake. I think he was just trying to stim this marine, and he accidentally clicked the entire group and stimmed everyone, which shouldn't be too bad of an issue, as long as he doesn't engage again before he heals up with those medevacs. There, mouzHasu does a very nice job being able to check the third, sees that there is not in fact a third expansion up. In fact, the command center has not even been started yet by MMA. Of course, Hasu has also not started his own expansion as well right here. So we see charge on the way. We see armor going down first. Tends to be the preference for those Protoss players that like to go armor first, or that like to go charge. And if you like to go blink kind of first, then you generally want to go for weapons. And so you can see he's chrono boosting these upgrades out now, and that is actually going to put him ahead of his Terran opponent. I think that might have been, maybe that was the second forge building when I commented on how the engineering bay was going to finish first. And you know, Slayer's MMA actually hasn't gotten a second engineering bay at this point, so that's going to put him a little bit behind on upgrades right now. He'll probably start armor, and my guess is when armor's about halfway, he'll start a second engineering bay and an armory as well, and those tend to go together. Scouting factory, of course, driving across. And a small little engagement here. I think this is going to be a diversionary tactic to allow his drop to be more effective. You can see on the minimap right there, 2 little red dots is going to be a drop right here. Looks like it's primarily Marines. That's usually what you want to drop with, unless you're trying to snipe some sort of building, as they just have much higher DPS. Looks like, I'm not really sure he'll be able to scare his Protoss armies, though. Notice how he only stimmed 4 Marines, 7 Marines now. It's because he didn't have the medevacs quite out yet. So he just wanted to make sure that they were available. Looks like Hasu is being pretty smart about this, as he does have these Stalkers kept in reserve right here. Not quite in the... Ooh, this could be very bad. No, not quite too bad. Very nice control from MMA. Is going to do maybe not so decent of a job there. And actually, this drop is going to be cleaned up with very little losses. At the same time, these forces were adequate in defending against the rest of those forces. All right, well, let's take a look at the units lost tab. So 1,400, 1,900. Okay, so that drop was a little bit net negative for Slayer's MMA. Certainly did not do the damage he wanted. It looks like mouzHasu was able to basically sniff that one out and deal with it as it went across. Now, we do have a lot of forces right here, but Concussive Shields is actually still not done right here, which is going to make those charge zealots very scary. for Slayers MMA at this point. And he's going to really want to try to get concussive shoots. He must have just forgotten about it right now. So, I mean, next time he fires at a unit, he knows that it's not slowed. I'm sure he'll notice and he'll start concussive shells. But before that moment happens, I mean, he's going to be in a lot of trouble should something like that occur. See the factory still floating up here. It looks like it's being ignored primarily by the Protoss player because, of course, there's no reason to deal with it at this point in time. Meanwhile, the third command center is completed for Slayers MMA. Hasu, I believe, is just finishing up his Nexus as well, so relatively similar timings for those expansions right there. And it's not like MMA is getting mule timings or anything because he's just starting it. Looks like he was going to build a planetary fortress but canceled it, changed his mind. Not quite sure what kind of provoked him to do that. I did see that he was building 3 ghosts. Yes, they are indeed done, but they don't have the energy yet for EMP. I'm going to keep them selected. Actually, it looks like there's not going to be engagement. I was going to say keep them selected to see just exactly when they get to 75 energy, but they'll be there before any engagement because of this. Looks like there was a small little drop right here. Looks like it was spotted by MMA right there. And, oh geez, he still hasn't noticed that he doesn't have concussive shells. That's pretty important, actually, kind of given... I mean, it's not super important once you get to these huge engagements, but it's something that really is nice for slowing your opponent's zealots down. Because the thing is when you're doing, looks like you did pick back up and is probably going to head on home right there. The thing is when you're kiting like this against zealots, which you basically have to do with your Marine Marauder army, you really have to, basically kite against the zealots. It slows down the front ones, and then in turn slows down the back ones because they all get jumbled up. This is going to be a very nice engagement for MMA, though, right now. All the charge lots have had their charge used already, and so they're not going to be too effective right here, which is why Hasu is trying to avoid any sort of conflict right here. And this is not going to be a very good angle for him. His zealots are going around exactly the wrong directions. The force fields were horrible, not locking in any units. They're actually stopping his zealots from engaging right here, and he's got the force field behind him and get on out of there as fast as possible, as he's going to be in a lot of trouble, still going to be in a lot of trouble. His EMPs were also quite devastating, able to hit the vast majority of those Protoss units, and I think he's just going to tear through this army and absolutely kill Hasu. Looks like the Blink Stalkers were able to blink away right here, but he's going to be in a lot of trouble. These Zealots are trying to run into this base right here, but they're on move command, means they're taking some damage from these Terran armies behind them as they go across. Meanwhile, actually, it looks like MMA has actually turned his army home. That was not a very good decision. I think he could have done a ton of damage. Actually, he probably would have just won if he walked directly into his opponent's base right there. Looks like he has not quite opted to do that, so he does want to take out that proxy pylon right there, and is probably going to regroup with these forces right here and go in for another engagement. That engagement will probably be fatal, should he decide to actually do it. He does have, let's see, 2 EMPs on this ghost, and I think an EMP on each of those other 2 ghosts, so he does have 4 EMPs right now. His opponent does have 4 High Templar. I think only 2 Storms right now, though. So as long as we see some moderate Storm dodging from MMA, I think he should be in a pretty good position right here. Nice job trying to snipe that. Oh, nice, able to snipe one of the High Templars that does have Storm energy. This is going to be a tricky engagement right now. He does not have any Vikings, though, for those Colossus, so that can prove to be a little bit of a difficulty right here. We're going to have to see exactly how this structure goes across. And it looks like very nice EMPs are going to take away shields from the majority of the Protoss units, which is going to cause him to back off right here. And we see a little dance going back and forth. Meanwhile, a small contingent of his army is going to go ahead and move up, and Hasu is going to try to engage the other portion of his army as much as possible to deal as much damage as possible. And he is able to kill a lot of the ghosts right there, and is probably going to be able to get a very nice storm off as long as, yes, very nice storms, dealing a ton of damage to those Marauders and Marines right there, and then turning the High Templar into ghosts right here. Unfortunately, his third base was taken out right now, so he's going to be in a very tough position to be able to win this game. I believe, oh no, I thought I saw the Viking shots moving across. Looks like that was not the case, but he was able to snipe off one of the Colossus anyway. And basically, Hasu is going to have to kill him on this counterattack, although he is floating a ton of resources right now. His lack of macro is actually showing through at this point in time. He's floating over 1,700 resources. Well, 1,700 gas, or minerals, and 1,300 gas is just a ton of resources to be floating at this point in time. And, I mean, he really can't be affording to be doing that much right now, as he is now just catching up on his micro. He is moving into double Colossus production, which is very nice for him, because I believe that MMA only has 1 starport right now, and 1 starport is barely enough. And I do mean barely enough to produce enough Vikings for 1 robo-producing Colossus, but if there's 2, definitely you're going to want to get that second starport. I don't think MMA has quite recognized that yet, or maybe he doesn't want to quite transition there. But I would definitely encourage him to do so. Obviously, I can't do that because this game happened in the past. But if I had a time machine, I would go back in time and say, MMA, build a second starport. He's building double Colossus right now. Looks like this army is going to just kind of jockey in position. The Marines are going to catch that composition right here, but it's still not exactly clear that those Colossus are are actually being produced at 2 robos at the same time right now. It is very gas intensive as well, which you can see that Hasu.avi's gas, even though he was floating like 1300 just a little while ago, is actually depleted right now. So he's going to do a very good, nice job in that respect. Looks like MMA is going to try to take the gold as his 4th. It is the easiest and most natural spot to kind of defend in terms of being closest to your other expansions, although it's also very easy for the enemy player to actually attack right now. MMA did just finish up 2-2 right here, so he is actually only half an one upgrade behind, as his opponent does have 3 armor, and his opponent is going to be ahead of him in terms of weapons. But he was able to win the previous combat while being behind on upgrades, and I believe he was actually farther behind on upgrades then. So, alright, so he sees, ooh, okay, that's a little dangerous moving those Vikings around. They are just part of the regular control group, obviously. He's not moving them individually to try to like snipe a Colossus, as that'd be a little dangerous, given high stocker count of his opponents. I want to see a second starport coming down pretty soon for MMA. I'm not quite sure why he's not opted to do that. I'm not sure that he's really recognized the real Colossus numbers that his opponent has, or maybe he just thinks that he can just produce enough Vikings off of the 1 starport to be able to really counter those, and I don't think that's going to be the case, but it might not end up mattering too badly. We actually have seen that they have evened out on supply right now. And, ooh, okay, so it looks like those ghosts are able to get off 1 AP, losing a number of ghosts right here. Another EMP is able to hit almost all of the zealots right there. Very nice. And all those zealots are going to be cleaned up by the rest of the majority of those forces. Looks like another EMP is barely going to be imprisoned right there by those zealots, which is going to prevent that second EMP from going off. Feedbacks are going to take out the rest of the medevacs, and MMA is going to be sent packing right now. He is going to be in a lot of trouble. You can also see personal cloaking for the ghosts is on the way as well. This base, by the way, which is a planetary fortress, is not going to be able to lift off, and it's just going to be sniped by those Colossus right there. That Viking, though, being worth its weight in gold right here, being very annoying for those Colossus. Looks like those SCVs are going to repair that expansion. Not sure if they're going to be able to save it, though. It's going to be very tough to save at this point in time. It kind of shows the disadvantage of building a planetary fortress. Able to snipe 3, oh no, just 2 Colossus there is going to be very effective right now for MMA, and it might induce mouzHasu to back off. Looks like he's not going to do that. He's actually going to double up on his Colossus production even more, just to make sure that he has plenty of Colossus to be able to engage in this sort of game. And the 1 starport right now, the fact that he's only building 1 Viking at a time, is really hurting MMA right now, as well as that missed little click right there, which sent his units into the zealots instead of away from the zealots, which is going to be a problem at any point in time. It looks like mouzHasu is ahead by 50 supply right now, so he's probably going to end up taking this match, it looks like. As, I mean, just a couple of storms right here would really devastate MMA's economy right here. Looks like he's not going to opt to do that. He's going to go straight for the production facilities. He does have reinforcements streaming across. Looks like MMA is going to try to go for a base trade scenario. That's not going to work very well, as his units are all in the deep red, and he doesn't have nearly any medevacs to heal them, as well as the fact that his opponent has a Dark Shrine on the way. So really, I'm just going to say, we're going to see the GG any time now, and it looks like we did in fact see it. So Slayers MMA making a large mistake, not being able to properly read the situation by getting the second starport. Also, just kind of in general, his combats were not really the best. I think that actually if he had followed Hasu.avi's directly into his base instead of trying to deal with the proxy pylon when he first won that engagement, he won that engagement right here in the middle, and then he decided to go back and destroy this proxy pylon right here. I think if he had just turned around and gone straight for his opponent's base, he had enough medevacs at the time, and his opponent only had maybe 1 or 2 storms possible that really would have been able to deal with his forces, and he probably would have been able to take the game, but because he waited, he allowed his opponent to get out some Colossus and really end up being able to hold off his final attack. And even though he was able to snipe that Nexus from Hasu.avi's had so many resources floating, it didn't end up mattering too much, and he was able to take the game. So very impressive game from both these players. Definitely enjoyed watching them, and we're going to move on to game number 2. This is a best of 3, by the way. This is PG on Minecraft signing off.